It wasn't just more plants. It wasn't just animals. It was something bigger. For weeks, I had been building this lush paradise, and I thought I had seen it all: the towering bamboo, the thick vines curling around every surface, the bursts of flowers painting the yard in wild color. But what happened next even caught me by surprise. It started one quiet morning. I stepped outside with a cup of coffee in hand, ready to do my usual check on the plants, when I heard something unusual: a deep croaking sound. At first, I thought it was just a frog, but as I walked closer, I realized there wasn't just one. There were several, hopping around near the small water feature I had installed. Somehow, my little pond had become home to frogs overnight. That wasn't all. As I stood there listening, I heard the distinct chirping of birds, but not the usual sparrows or robins. These were louder, more exotic. I looked up and saw a pair of bright green parrots perched on one of my palm trees. Parrots! I couldn't believe it. Apparently, they had escaped from somewhere or migrated from a nearby reserve, and my yard was the perfect landing spot. Soon, word spread, not just among people but among wildlife too. By the end of the week, my yard had turned into a genuine mini ecosystem. Butterflies floated over the flowers, bees hummed around the blooms, squirrels darted between the bamboo, and yes, the raccoons were still lounging in the shade like it was their personal resort. It was beautiful. It was alive. It was everything I had imagined, and more. But I knew exactly what this meant for the HOA. If they were mad before, this would send them into full meltdown mode. And it didn't take long for that prediction to come true. The first sign of trouble was Karen herself, standing on the sidewalk with her phone aimed at my yard, recording a video like she was documenting a crime scene. I could hear her muttering about uncontrolled wildlife and public safety hazards. Not long after, the HOA sent me another certified letter, this time accusing me of creating an unsafe environment and demanding immediate remediation. Unsafe environment? For who? The parrots? The frogs? The butterflies? It was laughable. But what really made me chuckle was the fact that the neighborhood didn't see it that way at all. In fact, they loved it. My yard had become the talk of the town. Families started walking by in the evenings just to admire it. Kids called it the jungle house and begged their parents to take pictures in front of it. Someone even posted a drone video of my property online, and it blew up, thousands of views, hundreds of comments cheering me on for creating such a unique space. The more popular my yard became, the more desperate the HOA grew. They called another emergency meeting, this time to vote on whether they could rewrite the bylaws to force me to comply. But changing rules takes time, and until then, they were stuck with me and my jungle. Still, I wasn't about to sit back and wait for them to change the game. I decided to double down. I added more plants, more water features, and even a few garden statues to give the place a true tropical vibe. I also installed a couple of solar lights to illuminate the greenery at night, making it glow like an enchanted forest after sunset. That's when the media showed up. Yes, the actual local news came to my house after hearing about the man who turned his front yard into a jungle to spite his HOA. They interviewed me on camera, asking why I did it, what the HOA thought, and whether I planned to back down. I told them the truth, that I was tired of petty rules and wanted to show people they didn't have to live in cookie-cutter neighborhoods if they didn't want to. The segment aired that evening, and my phone blew up with messages from friends, neighbors, and even strangers cheering me on. Some called me a hero, others called me crazy, but either way, I had everyone's attention. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any crazier, something happened that took this fight to a whole new level. One night, around 2 a.m., I heard rustling outside. At first, I thought it was the raccoons again, but when I looked out the window, I froze. Standing in the middle of my yard, among the bamboo and palms, was a deer. A full-grown deer, calmly nibbling on the leaves like it had found its own private buffet. It was surreal. A deer, in my suburban front yard. I grabbed my phone and snapped a picture, then posted it online with the caption, "The jungle has new residents." Within hours, the photo went viral. People were calling it a sanctuary, a nature haven, even a wildlife rescue. But the HOA? They lost their minds. The next morning, I woke up to find 3 new letters in my mailbox and a voicemail from Karen practically screaming about public danger and violating city ordinances. They even threatened to call animal control if I didn't restore order immediately. That's when I knew the showdown was inevitable. The HOA wasn't just angry anymore, they were preparing for battle. And this time, they weren't playing around. They were threatening lawsuits, city inspections, and even liens on my property. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't alone anymore. The neighborhood, the media, even people online, they were all on my side. And I was ready to fight, not just for my jungle, but for the right to live free of ridiculous HOA tyranny. The stage was set. The final showdown was coming. And I was going to make sure it was one they'd never forget. The morning after the deer sighting, my neighborhood felt like the calm before a storm. On the surface, everything was quiet. Kids rode their bikes, sprinklers hissed in the distance, and the smell of fresh-cut grass filled the air from houses that actually followed the HOA's perfect lawn rules. But beneath that normalcy, a battle was brewing, one that would decide the fate of my jungle. The HOA had gone silent for 24 hours, which was unusual. No letters, no Karen stomping across my driveway, no board members taking pictures like wildlife photographers. I knew what that meant, they were planning something big. And I was right. That afternoon, I got an email with the subject line, "Final Notice, Emergency Action Required." Attached was a scanned letter stating that if I didn't remove all unapproved landscaping within 48 hours, they would hire a contractor to do it themselves, and bill me for the cost. They also warned that failure to comply would result in legal action, fines, and even a lien on my property. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. This wasn't just a warning anymore. This was war. They were prepared to destroy everything I had built, everything I had spent months creating, without a shred of hesitation. But if they thought I was going to roll over and let them win, they clearly didn't know who they were dealing with. I immediately called a friend who worked as an attorney and explained the situation. He laughed and said, "They can't just come onto your property and tear things up. That's trespassing unless they have a court order." That was all I needed to hear. I asked him to draft a formal cease and desist letter, which I emailed to the HOA within an hour. Then, I went on the offensive. I posted the HOA's threat online, tagging the local news station that had covered my story before. Within hours, the post blew up again. Hundreds of comments poured in, calling out the HOA for abusing their power. People shared stories of their own HOA nightmares, and soon, the situation wasn't just a neighborhood squabble, it had become a viral debate about homeowners' rights. The next day, news crews were back on my street. They interviewed neighbors, many of whom spoke in my favor, saying the jungle had become a local attraction and even improved the neighborhood's character. Kids waved signs that read, "Save the jungle" and "We love nature." It felt like a full-blown protest, and honestly, it was hilarious. And then came the kicker, the city inspector showed up. Apparently, the HOA had reported me for multiple code violations, hoping to get the city on their side. But after a thorough inspection, the officer shrugged and said, "Looks good to me. No violations here." That was the turning point. With the city giving me the green light, the HOA lost their strongest weapon. They couldn't force me to rip out the plants without legal grounds, and they certainly didn't want to drag this into a costly lawsuit, especially now that the public and media were watching their every move. By the end of the week, the HOA caved. They sent me one final letter, this time much softer in tone. It basically said they were closing the matter, but encouraged me to maintain my property in a way that reflects community harmony. Translation: "We give up, but we still hate you." When I read that line, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. After months of warnings, threats, and intimidation, the jungle had won. And it didn't stop there. My yard became a local landmark. People from neighboring communities came by to see it. Kids loved exploring the greenery, and families took pictures in front of the palms and bamboo. It even got a permanent spot on a local blog's list of coolest houses in town. As for Karen, she still walks by with that same scowl on her face, her clipboard clutched like a security blanket. But she doesn't say a word anymore. She just glares at the jungle like it's mocking her, because, in a way, it is. Looking back, it started with a single notice about grass being too tall. That one petty complaint turned into a battle that changed the entire neighborhood. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. Because now, every time I step outside and hear the rustle of bamboo, the chirp of birds, and the splash of water in the pond, I smile. Not just because it's beautiful, but because it stands for something bigger: freedom, individuality, and the simple truth that sometimes, the best way to fight back is to grow wild. And that's exactly what I did. The jungle lives on.